In a broken wasteland, come to my fire.
What's going on, metalheads? Thank you all for tuning into this week's episode of the Metal Forge. My name is Mark Jackson. I am your host. Jason Gardner from the Heavy Metal Wasteland and the Ale Horn is here. And as you can see already, our guest this week is David Ellefson, legendary bass player from the thrash scene. Everybody knows who you are already, I would think, right?
I don't know. You'd have to ask around. I guess so.
I mean, you know, you've been here before, so I think my listeners already know who you are because we're all metalheads and everything. Dude, how are you today?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome. It's getting into a busy season of life here. As we were getting on the show, we announced a bass story show, which I have not done one of those since 2019. I did like a whole world tour with bass story that year. And we just announced one August 7th around the New Haven, Connecticut area there. And Chris Poland is going to be joining me as a guest. So he's going to be on that with me. He and I are actually going to be appearing at the Terrificon Comic-Con show at Mohegan Sun that's following weekend there on was it August 8, 9, and 10. So I figured, look, as long as we're there, book a show. Let's go play some songs, tell some stories. And, bass story, what was unique about it is it formed out of doing a clinic, which I don't always enjoy because, sometimes they're in very sterile clinical environments, like you're in a music store or something. And
sure.
And those have largely gone away because usually they were sponsored by, say Jackson Guitars or Harkey, some music manufacturer usually sponsors those things. And so that's largely gone away now. But I created Bass Story with the sort of storytelling, hey, David, can you play the Pete Sells bass line? This kind of questions, right? And then I eventually just put a band behind me so we could actually play some songs. Because at the end of the day, only it's a certain type of person that wants to hear how you play the bass. Most people just want to grab a beer and rock out and play some songs already, you know what I mean? So sure. It's sort of it combined all of those elements together. So I haven't done one in a while, so this will be the first one, and people seem to be responding really favorably and wanting more of them. So and then to have Chris Poland jump up and play with me, because of course he was a big part of it's funny, not only was he a big part of my early thrash career in the 80s, he and I have done a lot of stuff together with Kings of Thrash, him joining us as a guest on a bunch of stuff, and we have our live album The Best of the West that we filmed and recorded at the Whiskey A Go-Go back when we launched Kings of Thrash back in 2023. So Chris and I we've got a long journey together. In fact, we've probably done as much stuff in our after Megadeth years as we did when we were in Megadeth together many years back.
For sure. Now, with the new the Bass Talk Bass Story, is obviously I've always loved that idea. Storytellers, I've always wanted like a metal version of storytellers.
Got one.
Absolutely. The only thing, the only one that I really know of is like Kiss Unplugged, which ironically Jason and I were talking about last night, because that's really about it. You don't have a lot of these bands, Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer, Venom. None of these bands do acoustic sets for really. Well, Metallica does now with the All Within My Hands Foundation, but nobody else really does. And I think that's a missed market almost.
Yeah. To your point on that, we did a lot of that with Megadeth back in the 90s, especially once the Cryptic Writings album came out. It was actually Nick Menz's idea. We were playing in Yokohama, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo, and it was a big, really nice, cool theater. And he goes, man, why don't we play acoustic? Because it was kind of starting to be a buzz, from like Nirvana Unplugged, and MTV was doing a lot of this stuff. So we did it, and man, it was a huge hit. And then we took it down to South America. We played live on national Argentinian radio from an event that we did. It was kind of a small, intimate thing. And so for us, it really worked. We could even take songs like She Wolf and play them acoustic, and it translated. Marty would play this kind of flamenco Spanish style stuff in it. And, when you go into things acoustic, you really, I think you have to look at it like, well, you're not just playing your electric guitar parts on an acoustic guitar, because it sounds very thin. And,
Sure.
it's the acoustic guitar is a different instrument. It may be called a guitar. It may have 6 strings and the frets and fundamentally be the same type of instrument, but there's a lot more you can do with it. And as I've done acoustic stuff over the years, if you can really sort of lean into it and embellish and flush the tunes out a bit more with an acoustic mindset, man, it really turns into something great. Like you said, Kiss became masters at it, and it was so cool, to hear those hit songs. It's played in a different way. It's almost like you get 2 bands out of that with that one song.
And what was so cool, like when they did it for, like what you said, you're doing a convention here soon. Mm-hmm. And that's where they started those, was the Kiss conventions. They were doing acoustic sets and unplugged sets and stuff. And for, like see them like you've never seen them before. Type stuff.
I mean, and that's why I wanted to do this. We have a show with Dieth August 1st in Toronto, Canada. And then so I thought, well, look, we've got the Comic-Con show, the Terrificon, a week later, may as well just stay in the area. And so once Chris and I kind of coordinated our travel logistics, it was like, oh, let's do a show. So and it's fun. And of course, he and I together, fans love to see it. They love the songs that we performed on together. So it really makes for a cool night out, and doing it in a small, intimate setting, it allows us to have a little banter back and forth on stage. We can talk about some stuff, and then, ultimately it's kind of like, shut up and play your guitar, and get on with the song.
That's exactly. And honestly, I think that's what, when you read or watch any of the like documentaries of bands and such like that, you often tend to find that that's what everybody wants to go back to, essentially, especially when you're playing in big places, 10,000, 20, 30,000 people or more. And then finally, just coming back and being able to play an intimate gig is one of it's almost like a godsend, as they say.
Yeah. Well, look, it takes both, right? Because people want to go out and get their faces melted and rock the big stage. And then, then there is this VIP kind of mentality, where limited seating, and
sure.
So it's, and look, these thrash songs, we found this when we started Kings of Thrash, these songs were written when, they were written when Megadeth we were playing smaller places, 500, 1,000 seat venues. And we packed them, they were full, but these songs worked well in that. As the band got more popular, we started to play the bigger arenas, and into bigger concert settings. Ironically, the songs didn't translate as well. And then we started to, mess around with some tempo changes, because we saw with Peace Sells, here's, that record, pretty ferocious tempos, great energy. And then Peace Sells is this real kind of mid-tempo rocker. And of course, that was, the big hit from the record. So we realized that's kind of the tempo that works with our fans, somewhere in there, the Symphony of Destruction, Sweating Bullets, that kind of stuff, In My Darkest Hour, these songs, they translated well into the bigger settings we were playing at, because you could hear them, with all that volume and chaos going around at a thrash gig, you could hear them better, and they translated, especially as, you're playing sometimes to audiences, as we did with Alice Cooper and Ronnie James Dio and even Iron Maiden, we're playing to their audiences, not our audiences. So, it's really about putting your best foot forward, not only with the thrash stuff that we were, that kind of came, second nature to us, but crafting tunes that really had a great story to them, was a great musical journey, and yet, was presented in a way at a tempo and with all the trimmings on it, that someone who's not our fan could go, yeah, that Megadeth thing, they had one good song there, that was really good, maybe I'll go buy the record, so it's always about how to try to win over someone else's audience.
Right. And even, and Jason and I can attest to this, being on a regional or local level kind of thing, it being the same way, when you're playing with a band that's got a little bit more clout than you do, you're always trying to win their audience. And especially now, you have so many mixed metal genre bills on like the club level. It's like it's almost like you can't fit like a full thrash night because there might be two thrash bands in the area and that are worth their weight in salt. And then, you have to pick like a death metal band to fill out the bill, or, one of the Motorhead styles that, skirts punk and metal and kind of stuff. But I love it. So I did want to ask, is the backing band for the shows, is that the Kings of Thrash band?
No, it's actually my friends from a group called Dead by Wednesday who live in the area there. And I actually put a record out for them on Combat. And they're dear friends of mine. They've actually been my backing band, a couple of the members, Christian Lawrence, the drummer, Dave Sharp, the guitar player. We'll have a vocalist from the area as well, who I really like, sings in a cool Black Sabbath tribute band. So I've had these guys in my backing band before, when I was doing Bass Story up there in the area back in 2019. So in fact, we're just kind of sending the set list back and forth. It's like we already know the songs, it's a couple of rehearsals, it'll be good to go, so
right, just pick what you want.
Yeah, because to me, Bass Story is kind of going through my record collection too. This is where it started, this is where it went, this is where it transitioned over here, and into our Megadeth stuff, of course, and then some stuff that I did afterwards, and because when I started putting out Ellefson solo stuff, like with the Sleeping Giants album, and then we did that Post Malone cover, we did Simple Truth that we put out during COVID. It's funny, I was really active during COVID. It's like we were in the middle of a big Megadeth cycle, and of course that all got shut down, so my chops were up, my energy was cranking, and I was like, okay, I'm not just gonna, if I got to be stuck inside of a house, I'm going to be making some music, So I called my friends. We did the Ellefson no cover record, and I just thought, look, we don't know what this is, we don't know how long this whole thing's going to last, this pandemic thing, but it's like the worst thing we can do is bum out. Let's get our guitars in our hands, pick up your drumsticks, let's start making some music, and then podcasts started, and I did a few podcasts during that time. Of course, now I have my own, the David Ellefson Show, and my friend Josh Toomey is the one who urged me to do it. He goes, dude, you've got so many stories to tell, and
I know Josh, yeah,
and you've got so many friends and people. So I was like, all right, well then screw it, let me call my buddies up and let's just sit and wax philosophic on stuff, So it's great to be not only just us sitting around, kind of bullshitting about our times together. I mean, I just had Chris Poland on, but also, to contribute something, kind of be a go-to news source now. They can interview people as they're coming into their record cycles and help give them some promotion and do all that kind of stuff. So, it's for me, I always like show up contributing something. I was always taught growing up, when you go to someone's house, bring something, bring some flowers, bring whatever, in the old days, there's probably 6-pack of beer or wine. Today, it's probably a bag of coffee, but bring something to the party, So
hey, I still need to, are you still do the coffee, right?
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Any chance, you're doing any kind of store deals soon with that? Or is it just strictly through the website?
We have right now it's through the website. I think there are a couple of brick and mortar stores that do carry it. As I was getting into it, people are like, oh, make K-cups. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, well, that's like 25 grand just to even make a K-cup. I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't even like the taste of K-cup. So I was like, why would I do that? And then, so you look at it, you kind of look at the scale of economy and you kind of go, all right, if I get into this, I'm good. I'll never play the bass again. I'll just be full-time running a coffee company. And that was never the point of it. The point of it was
right.
Have something kind of fun on the side, kind of like a little merchandise item. But, and during, before COVID, we were making some pretty good progress, and then, but unfortunately, a lot of those stores had to close, a lot of these little Main Street mom and pop stores, they had to close. We had some cool places, everything from like head shops to yogurt shops to, unique boutique guitar store shops. Bought a ton of coffee that they wanted to have, next to their pedals and boutique guitars. They had Ellefson coffee, So I thought that was cool. I thought that was, look, you can go anywhere and get Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and all the big boys, you know what I mean? So I was never looking to compete with that. Mine was a fun rock and roll coffee,
For sure. You head shops, that's great. How many people know what that is out there today?
Well, that's what, I don't even know. I haven't smoked weed in almost 40 years, so I don't know. But but it's been a while, 35, 36
4 or
years.
40?
40, yeah. No,
oh gosh.
Yeah, at least 35, 36 years. It's been a minute, so
damn. Yeah. But hey, I mean, now it's all a digital. It's
look, it's maybe not a head shop. Now it's like a CBD store or something, right? I don't know. I'm kind of out of touch with the culture of that myself.
But. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of them did turn into, they were already secondhand stores for the most part.
Right.
They always had vinyl and stuff in a lot of head shops that you could pick up, dollar vinyl back in the day. But yeah,
totally.
I think now they sell DVDs and, just glassware.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's lifestyle, right? Whatever you call the store, it's lifestyle. You say glassware. Hey, we got some vinyl. Hey, we got some coffee. Hey, we got whatever else,
Hell yeah, man. Yeah. So with the around the pandemic, you said how that got shut down and you started doing like the no cover album. And was that also the time that you had teamed up with Guillermo and started Dieth? Was shortly thereafter?
It was after that. It was really in 2022, actually.
Was it?
Yeah, it was 2022. Yeah, we're kind of coming out of the pandemic. I mean, travel wasn't really open yet. And it's funny enough, Christian Lawrence from Dead by Wednesday, who's going to be in my bass story band. Hey, Kitty. It's always good when a black cat crosses your
David Ellefson.
Black cat crosses your path, just like I ain't superstitious, right? But it was actually Christian introduced me to Guillermo, and he sent me a song which became In the Hall of the Hanging Serpents. I loved it. It was cool, and it's very European death metal thing, and I've always been open to checking out different stuff. I've obviously pretty much defined and mastered one genre of music, with thrash metal. But I've always enjoyed checking out other things, and even especially as it even gets heavier, that one song we recorded, mixed it, and Guillermo, he goes, man, this is really good. This is fun. Of course, he was coming out of Entombed AD. His their singer Lars had just passed away. Mihal, our drummer, was decapitated. So we had all kind of moved on past our sort of bands of origin, I'll call them, me with Megadeth as well. And it was a fun time. And I've been through that a couple times in my career, F5 back in, the 2000s and stuff like that. It's fun when you move on past your main group, to find a new musical camaraderie and a new musical brotherhood, because, when bands end, it's weird. It's, there's always hard feelings over it. And I try to just go, pull the nose up, keep going to the higher altitudes. You know what I mean? Keep going, you know what I mean? And just keep rocking. So, Dieth, I flew over there in April of 2022 because things were finally starting to open up. And it's funny, I was actually at a Ghost Volbeat show here in town, and they were still in the bubble. They were still locked down, and I actually booked my flight that night at the concert. I was like, hey, I'm looking around going, I got to try to get over there. We got to get this thing going. And it wasn't called Dieth yet, but I thought, if we just get in the room and get it going, magic happens, So I thought, you know what? I'm a guy who gets on a plane, sight unseen, bring a bass, and let's go get in a room and see what we got. And I flew over there. Guillermo put the whole video shoot together for the song. Came out super cool. And
it's an amazing video.
Yeah, came up with the name Dieth right there in the dressing room while we were shooting the video. And the whole thing just came together in Gdansk, Poland. And I'd never been to Gdansk. I'd been a lot of places, and I'd never been to Gdansk. So, Gdansk kind of became a bit of a second home, because the band is based there, essentially. So, in fact, we got a show coming up here June 14th, a festival that we're playing at in Poland. So that kind of begins the summer, and then August 1st in Toronto. And, we've got a new album in the works right now. So, Dieth became a really cool new sort of musical appendage, out of my wheelhouse there.
Hell yeah. Jason, you're being kind of quiet today.
I'm just taking it in here.
Hell yeah. You also have New Kings of Thrash coming.
Yep.
With Lockdown.
Yeah.
Run through it. I mean,
sure.
Is it still the same group of guys I saw you with back in 2023, 2022, something like that?
It is. Yep, it is. Jeff Young and I had started writing some material again early 2022. Was it 20? Yeah, 22. Around when we were making the Nick Menza film, and so he and I connected. We started writing some material. We went in the studio with Kings of Thrash, just kind of kicking some ideas around. We started coming up with some other stuff. I think ultimately, you always want to write songs around the singer, right? And so we were just coming from 4 different directions. We were throwing ideas together, and we have a whole bunch of stuff kind of mostly demoed. And, when we came off the tour, we did the UK tour, did Europe in November last year. We're wrapping the tour up, looking at 2025, what's coming up ahead here for Kings of Thrash. Jeff had said, why don't we just write some stuff specifically around Chaz's voice? Because he's got the fans love him because he sounds so true and so authentic to, when we do the Megadeth material. And so I said to Jazz, listen, brother, you've got the true heart of a thrash warrior, man. I mean, you have it, you are that guy. So I said, just think 1984, Ride the Lightning, Overkill, Nuclear Assault, just go right to the belly of the beast. And he did. And he brought a couple of songs over to us, and Lockdown just kind of wrote itself. It was really, really good what he had. He wrote the lyric. And, I think quite fitting for the times we live in right now, that, everybody's kind of walking on eggshells. Everyone's afraid to speak out. Everyone's afraid to say anything. So not only did it certainly play back a little bit to the pandemic, but it even to current day, and I've been lucky enough to travel the world my whole career, and you see a lot of stuff, and I've gone to places that were just going into wars. I've been to places that were just coming out of wars. I've been to places who were defined by wars, traveling the world as a heavy metal, ambassador, if you will. We go. I remember Run Rust in Peace in 1991 when the Gulf War was going on. Everybody was coming home back to America. There, David Lee Roth and Cinderella and all these tours, and we were like, "Fuck that, we're going." So we go in. We go in when everybody else comes out. That's how I look at heavy metal. We accept all challenges and go in. Yeah, man, that's what you do, man.
I mean, so have you ever? Okay, that's a pretty real world situation that you just described right now. I read White Line Fever, the Lemmy's autobiography from back in the day. Right. And he talks about going into like South America where it's like under like government control, and like the military, is more like the police force and stuff like that. Have you ever went to a place where you were or had to cancel something because you all thought something was going to happen while you might have showed up?
Yeah, all the above. I remember we were going to go to Israel, I'm going to say 2014-ish. And there was the threat of the war breaking out. We actually had to buy terrorist insurance, which would allow.
That's a thing?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Jason,
it's a thing.
Jason, hang on. He Jason in his day job does home repair stuff. He's like an all around handyman. Do you have terrorist insurance, Jason?
My policy doesn't cover hostage negotiations, but I'm good. I'm good for $300,000 if they want to, go that route.
Well, it's something to look into, Yeah. Well, it was we were in Europe, and we were headed there, and basically, I think the insurance engaged, and sort of the defining line was once an American airline would not fly into Tel Aviv because of the state of the escalating war. That's the moment that we would have to cancel, and which we did, right? I think Delta Airlines or something that, hey, it's unsafe to fly into Tel Aviv. So at that moment, and I mean, literally, we're sitting in Europe somewhere. I forgot if we were in Italy or where we were, but we were sitting there ready to, do we go or not? And we ended up diverting, and we just stayed up in Amsterdam for like 5-6 days because our next show was a festival in Netherlands. So we just camped out up there. But yeah, and the God bless the fans of Israel. They're like, come on down, we got the Iron Dome, it's totally safe. Come on, guys, let's go. So they were egging us on, like, don't be afraid, Megadeth. It's cool, we got your back. So, but so there was that situation. Then I talked about the Gulf War. We have been. I remember going to, we went to South America on the Euthanasia album back in 1994, and that. We'd played Rock in Rio, so we'd been to Brazil, but we hadn't been to Argentina and Chile before. And, those countries were just coming out of, I think, some pretty harsh rulers and administrations, and,
Right.
here again, yay, the war is over. Let's call Megadeth, let's get some entertainment down here. You know what I mean? And that seemed to happen a lot. And it was weird, at that time, it's like the only bands who had really been there were the Stones, U2, the Ramones, and Megadeth. And we were considered kind of the big four of Argentina in particular. Like, we were the reigning heroes down there because we went when no one else would. And, so it's, and, then that just forever sort of, endears you into that culture as it did, as it probably still does for our Megadeth legacy, So, yeah, we've kind of seen, I remember during we were doing the World Needs a Hero tour, and it was 2001, and it was probably might have been August or something, or we were flying back home we did an around the world trip, June, July, August, went to the UK, to Europe, then we went over to Japan, down the Pacific Rim into Australia, and we were flying home from New Zealand. And I was thinking, God, everywhere you go around the world, there's a police presence at the airport. There's dogs, there's machine guns, there's a military presence. Like, they're not screwing around, right? And I was thinking, in America, you can literally walk to the gate, greet your, family as they walk off the plane. You can literally greet them, And I swear to goodness, a month later, 9/11 happened, and I was like, yep, that's the end of that. And
it's not been the same since.
It hasn't been the same since. I mean, even on that tour, I remember going up, we were flying a 747 on British Airways, and we were flying from Europe over to Japan, and I was probably from England to Japan, and I actually went up into the cockpit and hung out with the captains, looking down over Siberia as we were flying, and they were totally cool, like, with that, and even another flight when we went from Jakarta to Medellin, Indonesia, there was like film crews on the airplane filming us while we're flying. It was a big deal. We were like the Beatles to them, and I had a interest in flying. I took some lessons. I realized I didn't have the nerve for it, but I had an interest in how does this airplane get up here and stay up here, And so I remember going up into the cockpit and hanging out with the pilot, the co-pilot, and they were, thrilled Megadeth was on their plane. And I remember flying us through a cloud, and, and he was like, I was literally looking at the radar screen, and we were going across the equator right there. It was like, he goes, here we are. We're literally on the equator right here. And
that's awesome.
Isn't that cool? I mean, how
that
awesome was that? I was so, and then of course, like I say, 6 weeks later, 9/11 happens, and that's done. But that was so cool to have those kind of experiences, just being just a rock and roller,
and that's like when y'all toured with Maiden. You totally have something to talk about with Bruce.
Yeah,
talk about flying stuff.
It's funny, and I did. It's funny you say that, because on that tour in 2001, in fact, it's funny. It was probably the day before I was sitting up in the British Airways 747 cockpit. I mean, literally, because we probably flew from Heathrow. That's why we were on British Air, and I was talking to Bruce, because we had just flown in, I think, that day on a 757, and Bruce came to the Megadeth show that night, and I was just talking with him. He didn't really like to talk music so much. I could tell it made him uncomfortable. He felt like maybe a fan talking to him, and I know that feeling, So I was like, all right, let me just not talk music. Hey, Bruce, let's talk airplanes. And man, we had the best conversation. I mean, I was asking him everything about flaps and oxygen, and there was something in the USA Today that a 757 it had an oxygen thing that maybe there wasn't enough oxygen in the plane, or people would get headaches and get tired, and that would happen to me all the time. So I started asking him, because he was a 757 pilot at the time, and so we started just bullshitting talking about that, it's great when you meet your heroes, which he certainly is, and then of course becomes a contemporary as Megadeth got famous, and we did a lot of work with Iron Maiden over the years. But to sit and just kind of bullshit and talk about, it's like, hey, how's the wife? How's the kids? Hey, how's the pilot career coming? You know what I mean? And talk about things other than just music.
It's like, I'm not going to ask you about, what was the process of Seventh Son, I want to know. It's like, what did you think when you were up fucking 50,000 feet fucking?
Yeah. What do you do when there's a thunderstorm? Like, because as a passenger, I'm like, I want to know what you want to, it's funny. We did a tour in South America in 1998 because Cryptic Writing. So it was Whitesnake, Megadeth, Queensryche. And this is when Chris DeGarmo was still in the band. And he was a pilot even then. And we got on this one flight I think it was from Rio de Janeiro to fly down to Argentina. And it was an Aerolíneas Argentina flight, right? Dude, this plane was from like the 50s, just like an Amelia Earhart plane. There's like a wire
like
back
a
to
DC-10.
It's like DC-8. I mean, it was old. And as we're getting on, I'm asking the Queensryche guys, because again, I had this interest in flying, and I'm just asking them, I go, like, is this okay? Are we gonna die here? And they said, you know what? We just look at Chris. If Chris is chill and he's not freaking out, then we know it's cool. But if Chris starts freaking out, like if we're in turbulence and he's getting nervous, we get nervous, So he was their resident pilot,
Wow. So I do want to ask you some questions just about general life stuff with Dave, before we let you go. What album from your career that you think should get more love than it does?
You're talking Megadeth or all just in general, anything?
Well, let's go by if you want to give me a Megadeth one, and then go by solo stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Look, I think solo stuff, well, look, I think they all get terrific accolades. People have been very supportive to me and stuff that I've done when I was in Megadeth and when I'm not. They, with Dieth, Ellefson Soto, we have another Ellefson Soto record coming out here soon. We're going to be announcing it, but that stuff that's one of those moments where they're just incredible synergies, just like Dieth. It just sort of fell together, and just like Kings of Thrash, it just sort of fell together. And I, quite honestly, at this point in my life, those are the things I want to be involved in, things that come together of just sort of like-minded dudes, playing like-minded music and just kind of heading in the same direction. It shouldn't be difficult at this point, with Megadeth, the Risk album is probably the most controversial album in the catalog, right? And, admittedly, we did not sort of deliver a record that probably we even wanted to, because we kind of took for granted, like, well, we'll write the heavy metal tunes when we get down to Nashville. And then, of course, what happened is we got so involved in the task of writing the other songs for the album that we didn't have any time to really play the metal tunes. And it's interesting because going through that process, it sort of takes you away from being a metal band. With Cryptic Writings, it worked because we were very much a metal band writing these, say, 4 songs: Trust, Almost Honest, Use the Man, Secret Place, for example. Those were the 4 singles that were going to be deliberately aimed at the active rock American FM radio, because metal was changing, music was changing.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And look, if you're in any line of work, whether you're in Starbucks or you're Megadeth or you're Chevrolet or whoever you are, you have to be aware of market trends, market changes, and be able to adapt, to what's going on, or else you're out of business, right? So we played the game on Cryptic Writings and we hit the bullseye and we won. With Risk, we played the game, but there was the music was music was actually getting heavier. As a friend pointed out, as we were trying to we were going lighter, Disturbed and Godsmack and Rob Zombie, and this heavier kind of modern rock new metal sound was coming out. Korn was kind of the new Metallica for the new metal. They were kind of like, I call them like the Metallica of the new metal movement.
Well, they are. And it's
right.
interesting that you say that, because you all always have, because of the connection, have always been measured against Metallica.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, I would say unjustly, but it's being the top. It's like being the top two in the field, Coke and Pepsi and so on and so forth. Now, in that time period, they did the same thing, and it was a miss also with Reload, I think.
Totally. Yeah. No,
Load hit and Cryptic Writings hit, and then, but like Risk and Reload kind of had the same fate almost.
That is really interesting. I've thought about that before, and it's funny to actually hear somebody verbalize it like that, because you're right, kind of tit for tat, right? That was exactly what was going on. And, look, Slayer didn't change. Testament didn't change. Anthrax.
I don't know. That's the time period of Diabolus and Musica, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, look, I'll say this. Anthrax, kind of, I guess, being forced a bit because they had a singer change. But I mean, John Bush packs a punch, man. I mean, when that guy sings, you listen, because he's just such a great singer, And so he sort of gave them a jump start and a restart in the 90s just by having that one member change, you know what I mean? And when it's the singer, it matters, especially because it's kind of the main thing. So they also went through it. They were out of the big four. Slayer didn't really play the game. Anthrax, Megadeth, and Metallica did, and then, finally, by the time we got into the 2000s, it's like, oh, thank God that decade's over. And look, I'm not complaining about the 90s. Megadeth, that was our biggest decade. I mean, we were very prolific. We had our most successful, and to this day, probably some of our most applauded work with that lineup. It's just
that's the legendary lineup, in my opinion.
For sure,
it is such great musicians all involved.
Yeah. No, it's look, it was what it was. And, I think, I remember, and I've told this story before, one day a fan hit me and they said, why do you guys sort of talk down against Risk? They said, I was really young, and that was my very first Megadeth album I ever bought. I fell in love with it, and I bought every other album since. And I thought, you know what, man, I came into Kiss at Destroyer. Now, I've talked to some people recently. They went, "Oh, Destroyer, that was like their Risk." You know what I mean? Oh, I couldn't take Kiss anymore after that, right? Because they bought Hotter Than Hell and Dressed to Kill, right? But I thought about it. I thought, whatever age we're born, we have no say in that, right? So whatever is kind of coming across our plate, culturally, musically, artistically, that's where we are at that time. And like this fan said, they bought Risk, and then they went and bought every other Megadeth album afterwards, just like I bought Destroyer, and then I bought Kiss Alive, and then I bought Dressed to Kill and Hotter to Hell. In fact, I remember my friend, she had the originals, right? That was like this box set that had the first 3 albums in it and all these cool posters. And
hell yeah.
And they were family friends, so I'd always go to their house, and I'd always take her album, and I'd sit and I'd look at it, and I'd look at all the cool pictures. And but it was Destroyer that got me in the game, and so I thought the same thing is true. Is like, people like things for different reasons, and some people don't like things for different reasons, and whatever, it's power of choice, it's the way the good Lord made it. So you're not going to please everybody all the time. And we're not in that business, to be honest with you. Our business is to make things that we like. And hopefully there's just enough other sort of black t-shirt knuckleheads like us who actually are going to like it too, and then once the first record comes out, the die is cast. And then from there, it is a bit of a chess game, how you traverse the rest of the years of your career, because it would be sad if we just made Killing Is My Business 15 more times. It's like, what person does that, right? It's, you grow, you experience new things.
Well,
your music
and that's the
reflects that,
thing. I brought this up. It might have been with Jeff Becerra from Possessed. And it was the thing of I don't think a lot of people realize today when they're in the music industry how many of the bands like Megadeth, Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, Testament, how young you guys actually were doing that.
I wasn't even able to drink yet. I did, but I wasn't. Right. I mean, I was literally 18 when we started Megadeth, So I mean,
the real kids of the scene, like Death Angel guys, who are like in their late 40s now, and but like, I don't think a lot of people realize how young you all were, and with the decision making you all had to do, and watching you all grow as people, releasing things like Euthanasia versus Rust in Peace or any other album therein. We all go through the change of life thing.
We do. Yeah. No, we do. And I mean, look, new music and tomorrow's music is always driven by young people. It just is. You know what I mean? It's always a youthful heart that breaks through to the next, sort of 10 years of what's going to come after this, and it's funny. I remember going to the Grammys one year, and Usher brought out this young kid named Justin Bieber, right? And he's up there singing and dancing. He was young, right? I was like 8 or 10 or something, right? He was young. It'd be like me the year I picked up my bass at age 11 or something, and he's already at the Grammys, and again, the kid had a, super great career from a very young age. But imagine being a teenager having to go through that cycle. It's like, yeah, we're going to crash cars and go to rehab and shit's going to fall apart once in a while. You're just not not even prepared to handle that. I mean, it did for me, and I was in my 20s,
absolutely.
That happened, so that's just how it is,
again, like the counterpart thing here, their media production has been second to none on like with Metallica and the shit that they put out there, like the books and stuff, like with their box sets or whatever. And it always has blown my mind because I was looking at like Binge and Purge, and they showed the European tour in a scan sheet in there, and they had to make like $78,000 a show to break even.
Yeah.
And it's like to be 25 and have or 28 and dealing with that. It's like
your business shit. That big. Well, look, man, we need Metallica, right? We need them out front, breaking all the doors down. I'm just saying, even for you all making that decision. Yeah. No, exactly. But because they were out front, that was sort of, they paved the way, went through the forest and cut the trees down so that the rest of us had a path to go down. But you're right. As any of this stuff grew, and you're right, we're sitting around making, we're like basically corporate shareholders of our own businesses, and and coming, sitting in and having these financial decisions, and look, and you don't really know who you are yet, and some money starts coming your way. We already had the applause and the fame. Getting famous is easy. You can do all kinds of dumb shit to get famous, but making money is a lot harder, especially in music, and especially today. But as you were talking earlier, the local bands like what you guys have, regional bands versus the big monoliths of Megadeth and Metallica, and it's all the same. I mean, again, it's just the economy, the scale of the economy. It's what you just add more zeros to the income, you add more zeros to the outflow. Now you can have a truck instead of a van. Now you have a bus instead of a camper. It's all the same, right? You still got to get to the gig, play the show, set your shit up, get paid, and get out of there. And it's all, I think for all of us, every book I've read, the Van Halen books, the Geddy Lee book, Sammy Hagar, we're all the same. You know what I mean? And hopefully you get to this one point. I remember when we were on Ozfest 98, Tool, Limp Bizkit was playing before us, then us. We'd always play the 6 p.m. slot. Then right after us was Tool, which were the direct support before Ozzy. And we would go off and play, Ozfest would sometimes only play 3 or 4 shows a week. It wasn't a
Sure.
lot, right? But so the rest of us, we had bills to pay during the week, man. So you got to play Tuesday in Peoria and Wednesday in Champaign, Illinois, whatever. Like we got bills to pay, and Tool was as well. And I remember clearly talking to our manager about it, and the expenses for Megadeth to go play a one-off and Tool to play a one-off were almost the same, yet Tool was really blowing up and getting super popular, and they were playing to sometimes 2 to 3 times as many people, right? So if we're playing to a couple thousand, they're playing to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,000 people on their one-offs. So the amount of money that they made, the expenses are almost the same, but the amount of money that comes in is huge, and Metallica got that same windfall. And so, I look at with Megadeth, we were just a really hardworking band. We showed up, we delivered year after year, album after album, and we stayed in the game and we had a real career, but it wasn't always easy, and if someone had to go to rehab or it's some other thing, that shuts everything down for a year and you got to deal with that.
Right. Yeah. And people get hurt.
Yeah. And I was one of them too. I did that as well. So it's like we were all in it together, but you bring in different management changes, they see things different. They want to do business a different way. Sometimes it's for the better. Sometimes it just kept it flat, but you're right. At a very young age, you're learning about business, and you're really tightening up your business acumen. That's why I wrote that book, Making Music Your Business. I was kind of like, hey, come here, musician dude. Like, here's the 101 about how the music business really works in a very simple, general way. This is what it is. You want to get in the game, do your practicing, write your songs, but when you're in the door and you're getting paid to play, you're now in the business of entertainment. And this is just kind of a quick little Cliff Notes 101 of how it really works around here.
For sure. Hell yeah. So just a quick couple more. What was your favorite tour you ever went on?
It's funny that Ozfest 98 was a good one. I always look favorably on that.
The Ozfest tours were pretty awesome with the band, the menagerie that came through with all of the different the people and stuff. Because like I know a couple of years they had booked the Jim Rose Circus on the Ozfest tours, doing like the freak show stuff, eating glass.
I think he was on that one. Yeah, it was pretty bizarre. Yeah,
it's so wild.
Yeah, no, it was the traveling circus, man. I mean, it's that work to do that in America. In Europe, they have these festivals that are very defined by the culture. Germany will have one, Italy will have one, the Netherlands. Here, because of the amphitheaters that were built in the 80s, you could tour, you could take a festival like Ozfest and tour it, and, they did a really good job of keeping that thing current, getting legendary bands, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Megadeth, whoever, and yet always ushering in tomorrow.
Yeah, the Iron Maiden on the Ozfest really went over well, I think.
Yeah. I didn't go to that one. I did see Judas Priest, though. That was when Rob went back. And I remember seeing that somewhere like in Tennessee or something. I was like, man, he is killing it. Priest are back big time. And it was cool. But yeah, so that was one for sure. Really the whole Cryptic Writings album cycle was great. We started here in Phoenix. We did a big live radio broadcast to 100 some cities 120 cities across the country, playing the songs from the new album, Cryptic Writings. And then, that whole cycle was about an 18-month world tour. It was great. We went to Japan, I think twice, went to South America twice. It was a big, lengthy tour. And we were digging ourselves out of, some financial stuff as well. And, just because again, tours shit's expensive, like now, I mean, it's people, big bands complain. It's hard to tour. And, as I'm doing my own tours this year with Kings of Thrash and various things, you're always balancing the budget. You know what I mean?
You gotta make sure everybody's paid. And, and as being a promoter myself, I'm always the last one to get paid. So,
well, it's like that as the owner of a business. You're the last one to get paid, and I own every band that I'm in. if not solely, at least in part. So, look, your guitar tech and the bus driver and, the hotel, they all get paid first,
Yep.
and it was like that for a lot of years in Megadeth. I remember my guitar tech made more money than me and David share a guitar tech. He got paid more than we did. We were making, I remember out like, so far so good. So what? You're making $500 a week and the guy's making $750, but it's like, whatever, you own the band. When you're the owner, you get paid last. And in the short term, sometimes the least. Hopefully, in the long run, it pays off, and the gamble wins, and it did for us.
Absolutely. So before we get out of here today, as always, links are listed below. Give likes, shares, follows, go support, go do all the things and all the stuff. As Dave said earlier in the show here, it's pretty much all the same gig, whether you're up here or right here or right here. It's all the same gigs. So dude, support, do whatever you can. Jason, do you have anything to add before we get on with it?
I mean, dude, I have so much I could throw out, but I'll just
you
pick
can step in anytime.
Yeah. Well, y'all were talking. I don't want to step on anybody's shoes, but I'll take over from you, Mark. Take a break. When is the Nick Menza documentary going to be available to watch?
So Bayview Entertainment, who are the film company for it now, they're the actual DVD, the Blu-ray is available. In fact, you can go to my merch store, to Ellefson Emporium, and click there and purchase it. Right. So they did a limited edition of 1,000 copies. That's available right now. They're putting together the digital outlets where it'll come out, whether it's, Netflix or Tubi or wherever that ends up being. Those deals take a while. We wanted to do the premieres to just get it out there and let everybody know it's here, it's done, it's headed your way. So if you want a Blu-ray, go to the store, click, buy it, and then you'll have it. And then when it comes to your local streaming service, that is TBA.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm a big Nick Menza fan, so yeah, I was pretty excited that it finally got released.
Yeah.
I think his work is amazing. Like, I'm a drummer, so I steal a lot from him because everyone steals from everybody nowadays, especially when you're younger. But I think if I had to pick like one song to play for people, it wouldn't really be like anything off Rusted Peace. It would be Architecture of Aggression, because it's so simple, and he throws in those snares that are supposed to be like simulate the machine gun, like in the beginning of the song. Yeah. The song is so great, man. I love that. I love that song so much.
We just posted on my socials. A friend sent me a kid. He's got a cool looking Explorer bass, and he's playing with his fingers. He's playing Architecture of Aggression, the bass line. Mm-hmm. And, it's funny. I remember when me and Dave were writing the music for that, and I really love that bass line. I like to play it. It's funny you mentioned that, because it's to me it's got a lot of movement all over the neck, and you're right. There's these cool little time changes and the way that we phrase the riff and stuff like that. So it's just ironic you would bring that up, because I was literally just had my mind in that song this last week as we posted.
Oh, really? Yeah. I just listened to it on the way here, just freshening up on some stuff in case I got to ask. But also getting back to Risk, I don't think Risk isn't my favorite album. I would say it's probably my least favorite with the Marty Freeman stuff for sure. But to make it all the way through that, there is some really heavy riffs in there. Like I think the song Prince of Darkness is pretty awesome.
Yeah, Prince of Darkness is cool. Seven, I remember that Brad Pitt movie Seven had just come out, and we kind of used some of the lyric concepts around that. That was a very collaborative moment in the studio that day. I remember we were trying to figure something out, and I made a couple suggestions on stuff, and it sort of turned the corner and helped us finish the song. And Dan was all excited because he was like, "Man, we're working like a band. It feels like a band in here right now." Which even he is the producer, regardless of who brought the song in. It was fun, to feel a group working together in the studio, and I think that's what you've sent. That's what you really get from that 90s lineup, is a lot more of those collaborative group moments where, it's greater than the sum of its parts. Four guys, it was better than four guys. It was like eight guys in the room. You know what I mean? You can't even really equate what it was. There was magic in the chemistry of that lineup together.
Right. Do you think attaching Crush 'Em to that god awful Universal Soldier movie hurt it some?
I don't know. I remember, we had this opportunity that came for that. And really for us, it was more about, that WCW wrestler Goldberg was he was the big guy. He was the number one guy at the time. And he was a big Megadeth fan. So we wrote a tune that would be sort of his anthem. And it was kind of around the time when our songs, us and Metallica, maybe Pantera, you'd start hearing our songs at hockey games. Major MLB pitchers would be playing Trust as they walked out to the mound. You know what I mean? There was sort of these sports figures were using like our music as their introduction songs as they walked out to the field or the wrestling rink the wrestling ring in this case. And so it was cool. I remember when we were shooting the video at this power plant down in, I think, Long Beach, California, and then Jean-Claude Van Damme came down, and then he was going to shoot his segment right after we shot ours, and it was cool. It was cool seeing him. I mean, come on, he's a big time actor. He's a freaking rock star actor. So as we were writing the song, I came up with the idea of crush them because we were trying to come up with a chorus. I said, let's come up with something like that. And after we did an event, I know what it was. We played New Year's Evil here in Phoenix. It was when Ozzy went back to Black Sabbath, New Year's Eve of 98 to 99. That night, the lineup was Black Sabbath, Pantera, Megadeth, Slayer, Soulfly in that order. And we were the first big show to play the Arizona Diamondbacks Stadium here in town. The next day, we had a fan club dinner at Alice Cooperstown, and we had a couple of microphones set up, and Alice's place was all like brick. It was very echoey, right? So we had all these fans lined up, and we had them sing "Crush, Crush, Crush 'Em." So that's actually our fans on the record. We had the tempo right, crush. And so we taped that, and we took that to Nashville, and we put that in. That's sort of the arena crowd sound are those fans from Alice Cooperstown that we filmed the night after that show. So yeah. So that song it had some cool story to it. It was cool history, and like I say, by the time the record came out, even within a few months, music styles kind of went heavier, and we had a record that wasn't so heavy, and it just didn't all line up,
Right.
One of those you can't hit the mark every time,
I mean, actually, now that I think about it, like the Megadeth stuff on soundtracks, like all the Hidden Treasures EP and stuff, I don't really think any of those movies were really, really huge. Like Last Action Hero wasn't as big as it should have been. Did you have one on like Lost Highway?
It's
I think
funny.
Bill and Ted's.
I have a Last Action Hero. I don't think I have it hanging up here, but right up here behind me, up on the top row, are like Beavis and Butthead. And
I've got that one.
Funny thing.
Bill and Ted Go to Hell, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, dude, such a fucking iconic riff, man.
Well,
the first time I heard that, I was like blown away, man.
Which one? Which one is that?
The Go to Hell song, the riff, period.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, funny thing that you had mentioned that like back in like 98, 99, that's when people were coming out on the mound to like Megadeth songs and stuff like that. Well, when I was a kid, like I took karate and kickboxing.
Right.
And I had my first amateur fight. I picked 99 Ways to Die.
See, you're one of the guys. You're one of those athletes. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just like
one of the greats right here. Little did we know.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Armchair quarterback now.
Yeah.
What else you got, Jace?
How awesome was filming the Sweat and Bullets video? Because that's like that's my favorite Megadeth video.
So it's funny with that. The outcome of it is fantastic. I agree. It was cool. As we filmed it, it was way less glorious than it looks because it was the directors, Wayne Isham and his partner Kurt. They had done all the big Bon Jovi videos, Motley Crue, Everything from, what's the big button? I'm a cowboy, steel horse. Right. Like so they did all Dead or Alive. They did all the Black Album videos. I think they did one for Metallica. I know for sure they did all the Black Album videos. So these guys were big time, and so we brought them in to do everything starting on Countdown to Extinction. They did everything on Countdown to Extinction through all of the one-offs, Angry Again, 99 Ways to Die, and then they also did Train of Consequences and the To Le Mans video, which unfortunately it got rejected by MTV. It never got played. So they did all those. So when we did 99 Ways to Die, it was this brand new technology, this digital technology that they were using, where they could film me sitting here, and then they would do another shot of me sitting over here, and another shot of me sitting here. And basically what they're doing is they're overdubbing, right? Like we know with music, when you overdub, right? You play a rhythm guitar, then a lead, right? You build well, that's what this was in filmmaking, basically overdubbing and using, they could do it digitally. So that's how they could have several of us in the room. Like they had Dave kicking him, and, they had all these different, images of us. And so it was filmed all independently. I mean, it was a long video shoot, and we didn't see each other. Like none of us were there at the same time at the shoot. We were all just, kind of like making a record. You're sitting here playing bass, and my bandmates are at the beach or whatever, So lots of times these things sound like we're all together, and we're not, and so that was one of those videos for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I remember seeing it on MTV for the first time when I finally got cable. I think it was like Headbangers Ball or something. When I was like absorbing all this shit in, like it was all new to me. And I was like 16 when we had like satellite, because I live out in the woods pretty far, and yeah, I just remember that being a period of my life where I was just like, I took it all in. Like that's all I did. Like Saturday night, like fuck my friends, I'm watching fucking Headbangers Ball. Like that's what I'm gonna do for 2 hours. It's like my friends suck because they listen to country. Like I'm not doing that. So yeah, my musical knowledge expanded like 1,000,000% in like a matter of like months, dude. Like I'm like Megadeth. I always remember the Sweat and Bullets video as like, I have to tell my mom I need to go buy this tape. And then I made my mom go buy the Euthanasia CD when it came out, and she's like,
"Oh yeah, moms love that." A bunch of babies.
She was like, "Look, son," she's like, "I don't know what the hell this is, like, but don't ask me to buy you anything on this again, because like this is like there's something really wrong with this picture." And I was like, "Yeah, but the music is so awesome, like whatever, and like yeah." So that was the last thing she ever bought for me that I asked. After that, I had to go with her, and I would just like venture off in the mall to like Tape World or Camelot's Music or whatever was open, and go buy my metal per se. And then the cooler the cover, the more I was into it, So
that's the thing of metal.
Yeah, when you're young, you're very impressionable. So it's like babies hanging upside down on a clothesline. Check. It's like dude with white hair getting executed. Check.
You should have had her go buy Mayhem for you.
I might not have got to them yet in my musical discovery, but it probably would be on the list sooner or later.
Hey, gentlemen, I got to jump. It's been good. Great talking with you. Yep. Have a good one,
Dave.
You guys.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
On our way out, we're gonna play the new video for Lockdown.
Nice. Good.
Thanks, Dave.
See you guys. Bye.
Hey metalheads, you like tattoos? Of course you do. If you're in the Louisville, Kentucky area, come on over the bridge to Clarksville, Indiana, and get you some ink done at Ageless Art. If ink isn't your thing, they have a piercing studio as well. Visit agelessartclarksville.com to see some frequently asked questions, meet the staff. The shop is open Monday through Thursday, 12 to 8 p.m., Saturdays, 12 to 10 p.m., and Sundays, 12 to 6 p.m., all appointment-only spots. You can set up your appointments by phone at 812-283-1793 or email agelessarttattooandpiercing@gmail.com, and someone will get you set up for your first or your next tattoo or piercing. Hey metalheads, after going to a rager, what's your ultimate go-to? Mine is totally pizza. So when Overload is playing, or I'm promoting the Metal Forge live showcases, or the big goddamn metal show, I go to Pizza Donisi. Pizza Donisi is gourmet artisan pizza from right here in Louisville, Kentucky. It features things like the pizza of the month, the sandwiches, and also vegetarian and vegan options, which is so totally fucking cool for all of it's awesome pizza. You definitely want to go. Hey, and also from time to time they do cannolis. Oh, so fucking good. You know what they said, man? Leave the gun, take the cannoli. Yeah, just like that in Godfather. They're located right next to the Mag Bar at 1396 South 2nd Street. So either stop in or call in at 502-213-0488. They're open till midnight. The witching hour.
Heineken, fuck that shit. Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Hey metalheads, you all hear me talk about Mag Bar all the time. It is the home to the Metal Forge live showcases and is an integral stop in the ultimate underground metal tour schedule. They obviously feature live music, but the Mag Bar also has daily specials like Pint and Slice Night on Tuesdays with Pizza Donisi. But they also do Bring Your Own Vinyl on Thursdays with DJ Kent Jackson, and Finer Things Sundays. Located right next to Pizza Donisi at 1398 South 2nd Street, open 3 p.m. to 4 a.m. 7 days a week. Get your asses out to the Mag Bar. Rock out. For 45 years and keeping Louisville weird, Electric Ladyland has been there for all your eccentricities. While they do offer the best smoking supplies out on the market today, there's a whole lot more to check out. From ashtrays and blacklight posters, to records, incense and burners, and items to stock your metaphysical supply. They are open from 10 to 10, 7 days a week. Located at 2325 Bardstown Road in Louisville, Kentucky, and at electricladyland420.com. Roll out. In 2017, one man's vision and passion for all things metal started out as a record store in his house. Years later, the fight against a mainstream empire continues as Shade Beast. An independent metal collective and online store based in Athens, Georgia, is the world's premier heavy metal brand for music heads that value authenticity over the mainstream acceptance. Featuring original t-shirts from some of the best underground artists, as well as stickers, posters from the Shade Beast Presents concert series. Unique, one-of-a-kind collectibles and small curated selection of vinyl and cassettes from the masters old and new. Visit shadebeast.com and enter promo code SithLord for free domestic shipping on your first order, whether you're a new customer or returning. And be sure to join the Shade Beast social groups on Facebook and the interwebs to keep up with the new release announcements and talk all things metal and Star Wars. You'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and filth.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The Sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Since 2013, there has been a calling from the underground, from the graves of all those unholy, and they decided to make a zine to talk about all of this. Soul Grinder Zine! An independent metal zine to keep you informed on all things metal and horror from the underground. Available in both print and digital formats, they're bringing you the best interviews and reviews out there today. Not only do they do the zine, but they also do compilation CDs. Check them out at facebook.com/soulgrinder.zine and start your subscription now. Hey everybody, let me tell you about the new sponsor to the Metal Forge, Unchained Tapes. They're an independent Pennsylvania tape label. They focus on extreme metal and punk with a killer approach to the tape scene. Visit their web store at unchainedtapes.bigcartel.com now to get your fill of tapes. And for being a Metal Forge listener, enter the code METALFORGE10 at checkout to get a 10% discount on your total purchase. That's unchainedtapes.bigcartel.com.
What's up, Metal Forge fans? This is Alan Bishop, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest and head distiller at Spirits of French Lick. Do you find yourself drawn to the unexplained, fascinated by the Fortean, or enchanted by the paranormal? If the things that go bump in the night resonate in your mind, then tune into my brand new podcast, If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything. Featuring first-hand accounts, collected stories, interviews, history, and speculation related to all things not of this world. Available now on Anchor, Spotify, Google, Amazon, and more. Set back, relax, and remember, if you have ghosts, you have everything.
Hey, let me tell you guys about Mercenary Press. They're an independent London label and distributor of all things metal. Mercenary Press delivers the goods from their own independent zine. Trust me, you're going to want to get in on that. To distributing various bands from all over the world, including Cramp from Spain and Sadistic Force from Texas. Visit mercenarypress.bigcartel.com to find out what all they have in stock and what you can order. And for Metal Forge listeners, enter code METALFORGE10 to receive a discount on your total purchase at mercenarypress.bigcartel.com. Check it out now. Hey Metalheads, it's with great pleasure I get to tell you guys about a new sponsor to the Metal Forge, Ageless Art, New Albany. After 20 years of owning and operating Ageless Art in Clarksville, Indiana, Phil Garrett had a vision for a new type of tattoo studio. Something that is clean and modern, sleek, refined, inviting. And he's done just that with Ageless Art in New Albany. You can find it at 2736 Charlestown Road, New Albany, Indiana, 47150. Business hours are Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sundays are 12 to 6. All sessions are appointment only, so give them a call and go get you some new ink. Or if it's your first time, go get your first one, baby.
In a broken wasteland, come to my fire and place your blood and steel upon my